There is a specific kind of man who, when something breaks, does not call anyone. He does not scroll for answers. He does not ask for permission. He just stands there, stares at the problem, and something shifts in his face. Not panic, not frustration, something quieter, something that looks almost like focus. That moment is worth examining because the broken thing was never really the point. When a man learns to work on something as complex and unforgiving as a machine, something changes in the architecture of how he thinks. It does not happen in a classroom. It does not happen from watching someone else do it. It happens in the dirt, in the heat, with grease on his hands and a problem that refuses to cooperate. That environment rewires something deep in the male brain. Most men go through life outsourcing their problems. Something breaks, they find someone to fix it. Something fails, they find someone to explain it. There is nothing wrong with that. But men who choose to figure things out themselves made a different decision at some point. Consciously or not, they decided that difficulty was not a signal to retreat. That decision, which looks like stubbornness from the outside, is actually a philosophy. When a man diagnoses a problem through physical engagement, he is not just gathering information. He is building a mental model of an invisible system. He is holding variables in working memory simultaneously: sound, history, feel, smell, and cross-referencing them against experience stored in his hands, not in language. Researchers who study how the body and mind work together call this embodied cognition. The knowledge lives below the level of words. Ask a man with this kind of skill how he knew something was wrong, and he will pause. He might say, "It just felt off." He is not being vague. He is reporting accurately. The knowledge does not exist in a sentence he can hand you. It was built through repetition, failure, and the specific silence that follows when something finally works. This builds a personality trait that looks, from the outside, like distrust of authority. Men who solve problems with their hands tend to trust their own perception over received opinion. They have been in situations where the expert was wrong, where the manual did not account for the specific conditions in front of them, where their own judgment was the only thing that got them through. Over time, this becomes a bias toward direct experience. They grow skeptical of people who speak with great confidence about things they have never physically touched. That is not arrogance. That is an epistemology built in the gap between what someone told them and what was actually true. There is also something about mechanical work and time that teaches a lesson most men never get anywhere else. Fixing something real cannot be rushed in the way digital tasks can. There are sequences that must be followed. There are specifications that exist for physical reasons, not bureaucratic ones. Cut a corner and the problem comes back, usually worse. Men who internalize this lesson carry it into everything. They become unusually patient with slow processes, unusually skeptical of anything that promises a fast result. If you agree with that, comment 1. If you think it is more complicated than that, comment 0. Either way, I want to know where you stand. Now consider where this behavior comes from. Many men who operate this way did not figure it out alone. They learned in the presence of someone else. A father in a garage. An older man who said almost nothing but handed over a tool and waited. A mentor who showed instead of explained. There was no curriculum, no lesson plan. What was being transmitted was not technical information. It was a relationship to difficulty, a way of being with a problem that did not involve walking away from it. This is why this kind of competence becomes identity for men. When a skill is learned through a relationship, it carries emotional weight that no tutorial can replicate. The first real problem a man solved with his own hands is remembered with a specificity that is almost biographical. Not because of the problem itself, but because of who was there, because of what it meant, because of what it proved. This is where people misread men who operate this way. They see the self-sufficiency and assume it is about not wanting help. They see the quiet confidence and read it as coldness. But underneath, something else is operating. Men who learned early that problems yield to patience, that the world responds to careful attention, that mastery is available to anyone willing to stay with difficulty long enough. These men developed what researchers call an internal locus of control. The belief that outcomes are primarily shaped by their own effort and understanding, not by luck, not by what other people decide. That belief changes everything. It changes how a man approaches a challenge. It changes how he responds when something does not go his way. It changes his tolerance for ambiguity and his threshold for asking for help. It is not that he does not need other people. It is that he carries a deeply encoded faith in his own capacity to figure things out. That faith was not given to him. It was built one solved problem at a time. There is one more thing worth naming. Working on something real is one of the last remaining contexts in which a man can be completely verifiably right. In most areas of modern life, success is ambiguous. Did the meeting go well? Hard to say. Was the decision correct? Depends who you ask. But something that was not working and now is, that is not a matter of interpretation. The feedback is absolute. For men who spend most of their time in environments of subjective evaluation and uncertain outcome, that kind of clarity is not just satisfying. It is stabilizing. This is why a man who is overwhelmed does not always talk about it. He works on something. He finds a bounded problem with a knowable solution. He rebuilds, in miniature, the experience of competence and control that the rest of the week may have taken from him. What looks like a coping mechanism is actually a psychological reset. What looks like avoiding the problem is actually restoring the part of himself that can face it. And right now, research shows that more than 3/4 of young men who are struggling with their mental health do not want to talk about it. They do not believe they need help. They are isolated in a way that previous generations were not. They were handed a digital world that was not designed for their development. It was designed for engagement. The result is a generation of men who have access to everything except the thing that actually builds psychological stability, the experience of physical difficulty, patient effort, and a problem that surrenders to their own hands. Want me to go deeper on this in a follow-up? Comment 8. The question is not whether you know how to fix something with your hands. The question is whether you have built any context in your life where the feedback is real, where effort has a direct and honest consequence, where you are the one responsible for the outcome. Because the men who have that, whether they found it in a garage, on a court, in a workshop, or anywhere else where the world gives a clear answer, those men carry something into every other area of their life that cannot be taught in a lecture. It is a quiet confidence, a refusal to collapse under ambiguity, a deeply held belief that if they stay with it long enough, it will give way. That belief was never really about the machine. It was always about what kind of man they decided to become.